Genesis lays out how the pattern of the world works. And so I take the spiritual truths of things over the material truths first. So if you can work out that pattern or relationship, everything else in your life will basically fall into place, including the environmental and all your relationships. So as an example, I mean, like we were talking about before, is God he created this world for us, right? So we're the intellect that perceives this world, that works with it. And so we're a part of it. And so, you know, he gave us work, right? Like he said, you're going to name the animals, you're going to live amongst it, and to honor and glorify me. And so after the fall, it kind of mimics in the same manner of like a lot of these environmental crises we're having, in that, you know, one thing that happens is the world begins to hurt us. Like that's when they start running through the thorns and stuff like that, and it gives them a garment of skin. And the garment of skin, in a way, you can think of as something like technology, because it gives us, it extends our ability of something, and so we forget. But when we're in that garment for too long, we forget how the world really works, right? Like we forget that the thorns hurt us, or we forget that, and so when you look at these as these patterns, you start to realize that you know, they kind of scale at different levels of reality. But then, you know, then sacrifice is something really important too. So I know we a lot of the environmental talk and stuff like that is, you know, compassion towards animals and making sure we treat them correctly and stuff like that. But we also have to remember that, you know, death is part of the cycle. Like like we have to sacrifice. So in a way, the cow in its nature, to a certain extent, like he or she like wants to be sacrificed right, in order, because it becomes more part of us. So when you eat something, it becomes part of your body, right? And so you have like this communal aspect to it. And so like sacrifice. So some of these things about, you know, tying yourself, like chaining yourself to trees or not wanting to hurt animals, I think is also a misunderstanding of what sacrifice is and how it works, right? So obviously you have to kill something, like particularly a living thing, in order to eat it, right? And so that it's like just understanding these patterns help. And so like if a scientist or something comes out and says some data points and stuff, if it doesn't fit into those patterns, I don't know where you're basing your information off of, right? Like, I don't know what it is. And I think traditionally, I mean, that's how science worked. Like you would look at you would work through the spirituality and look, and then base the material science you find off of that spiritual truth, right? And so that's why you have now sometimes like scientists. I saw this guy in the Irish news channel that said the first thing we need to do is cut off all meat to save the planet. Like we have to stop producing all livestock, all meat, and then slowly we'll phase out the vegetables and it'll all become lab-based food. It's like, man,
perfect.
And it's like
score. That's the answer, right?
But it's like, wow, like he's so right, like blinded, like I said, by his garments of skin, that he's like floating up off on top of the world. And it's like, dude, you're forgetting that you're part of this planet, right? Like bring yourself back down to reality.
And that's the key. I spent last night in a tent with my family and some friends of ours, right? We're out, you know, it's one of those like pre-made drive-in campsites or whatever. And I don't like camping. Right. I don't like camping. I don't like hiking. I do a lot of camping. I do a lot of hiking, but I do them not as ends in themselves, but as means to an end, right? So I do a ton of camping because there's a lot of deer that live on that barrier island, and it's hard to get over there. And so I've got to spend a day taking a boat over there. There's no house on there. I'm going to build my little camp, and I'm going to spend the night, and then I'm going to spend the next week hunting over there, right? So I camp as a means to an end. And I'm talking about this because of what you just said about participating in nature, because we are a part of nature. Right now, we are participating in nature, right? We're not above, we're not beyond it. Right. And I think that observing nature is great. Hikes are awesome. Go on a hike. That's good for you. Right. Camping's fun. Do that, whatever. But it's not participating in it in the same way that you are if you are foraging for morel mushrooms. Right. If you are going out to, and this sounds bad from an environmental perspective, but it's not, right? If you're going out there to take things from nature for the sake of your own consumption, for the sake of your own use, that is rightly ordered. You just have to do that in a way that respects the nature, right? So once again, I had an issue with the way the animals were treated, but my reason or how we solved that problem was not we are not going to eat any animals, because animals, and this doesn't sound really politically correct, but it's true. A lot of animals are put here for us. This world is put here for us, right? And so I'm still going to go out and I'm going to find the deer and I'm going to shoot the deer, and the deer is going to die. And I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take the deer back to my house and I'm going to empty out the deer and I'm going to separate it into parts that are usable and not. And I'm going to break it down and then I'm going to feed it to myself and my children, right? Because that's what the deer is for. And that is okay. And I give a ton of money to Whitetail Unlimited. I'm really big into all these conservation movements, and I can love the species as reflections of God's creation or as parts of God's creation and still kill the animal and feel totally at peace about that, because that's why they're here.
Whoa, hey, you made it to the end of the video. Way to go. Congratulations. Good for you. That's hard to do nowadays. If you have a second, could you please drop us a like, subscribe, and if you really enjoyed this episode, go check out our full Honest to God. This is just a clip. There's so much more to this.